Hey guys, I'll do a video today and look at the new heavens and new earth a little closer. I did a video on this a few weeks ago. I want to do a follow-up video looking at it a little more in depth and getting some questions on this. This is confusing to some people when looking at a new heavens and new earth that is mentioned in Isaiah 65 and 66 and 2 Peter 3 in relation to the new heaven and new earth of Revelation 21. And these are two completely distinct events, separated by over 1,000 years. The first event, the new heavens and new earth, occurred after the second coming of Jesus Christ and the 7 trumpet and vial judgments that we see in the book of Revelation. The new heaven and new earth that is mentioned in Revelation 21 is still in our future and has not occurred yet. But there will be many that will look at these two and conflate them. And that's called a false equivalence, when there's two distinct, separate things, but they're confused as being the same. So let's go into it. Isaiah 65:17, for behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former shall not be remembered, nor come into mind. And then again in Isaiah 66:22, for it's the new heavens and the new earth, which I will make, shall remain before me, saith the Lord, so shall your seed and your name remain. These two prophetic passages that is seen at the end of the book of Isaiah are the same new heavens and new earth that Peter is speaking about in 2 Peter 3, when he is relating this passage to that generation that would experience this event. In 2 Peter 3:7, but the heavens and the earth, which are now by the same word, are kept in store, reserved unto fire against the day of judgment and perdition of ungodly men. But beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. And again, I think Peter was actually alluding to the day of the Lord being at hand, and at the time of the day of the Lord, a millennial 1,000-year reign would occur afterwards. This is a literal day, and he's equating it with a literal 1,000 years in this simile. But it continues in 2 Peter 3:9, the Lord is not slack concerning his promise, as some men count slackness, but is long-suffering to usward, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. Seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of persons ought ye to be in all holy conversation and godliness, looking for and hastening unto the coming of the day of God, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for new heavens and a new earth, wherein dwelleth righteousness. So, again, this new heavens and new earth that Isaiah and 2 Peter 3 are speaking of are very distinct from the new heaven and new earth that we read about in the book of Revelation. In Revelation 21:1, it reads, and I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them and be their God. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. This again, no more death, no more crying, no more pain, is in our future. We can see here in this corruptible world that we live in today that there is still death and pain and suffering. So again, these passages are distinct from each other and are talking about very different events separated by over 1,000 years. Now let's look at the new heavens and new earth. Why did Isaiah and Peter call them the new heavens and new earth? Well, it's because they were a completely different creation from what once was prior to the seventh trumpet and seventh vial that we see in the book of Revelation. And we see in the book of Revelation this mega quake at the seventh vial, the greatest earthquake of all time. And in a couple of previous recent videos, we discussed this in relation to Pangea, the continental drift theory, what mankind says occurs over millions and millions of years. All our scientists and experts will tell you this, but I propose that it did indeed occur in our continents, which were once supercontinent, through a cataclysmic event separated into the continents that we see today. But it didn't happen over millions and millions of years with the continental drift theory and plate tectonics, but it happened much quicker and much more recent through the events of the trumpet and vial judgments of Revelation, specifically the seventh vial judgment. And the earth at one time looked like this, but here is the new earth that resulted after this catastrophic event that we read about in the book of Revelation. And we see this all throughout the Bible. Speaking of this cataclysmic event, it was prophesied through the Old Testament, throughout the prophets. For instance, in Isaiah 13:6, "Howl ye, for the day of the Lord is at hand. It shall come as a destruction from the Almighty. Therefore shall all hands be faint, and every man's heart shall melt. And they shall be afraid, pains and sorrows shall take hold of them. They shall be in pain as a woman that travaileth. They shall be amazed one at another. Their faces shall be as flames. Behold, the day of the Lord cometh, cruel both with wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he shall destroy the sinners thereof out of it. For the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in his going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. And I will punish the world for their evil and the wicked for their iniquity, and I will cause the arrogancy of the proud to cease, and will lay low the haughtiness of the terrible. I will make a man more precious than fine gold, even a man than the golden wedge of Ophir. Therefore I will shake the heavens, and the earth shall remove out of her place in the wrath of the Lord of hosts, and in the day of his fierce anger." This occurred, and as a result, there was a new heavens and new earth. Now, previously, just like I said and showed, there was a new earth that was created. But now I want to look at and show what the new heavens were all about. Because, again, the new heavens are part of this description that Isaiah and Peter are relating. And we see in the sixth seal, in the book of Revelation, Revelation 6, this is the time of Jesus' second coming. We see earthquakes and the sun blackened, as well as the moon and stars falling from heaven. And this is, again, the prophets of old prophesied of this day of the Lord, this catastrophic event. The sun and the moon shall be darkened, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. The Lord also shall roar out of Zion and utter his voice from Jerusalem, and the heavens and the earth shall shake. But the Lord will be the hope of his people and the strength of the children of Israel. Joel 3:15 and 16. And we see again in the book of Isaiah, chapter 34, verses 4 and 5, "And all the host of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall be rolled together as a scroll, and all their hosts shall fall down as the leaf falleth off from the vine, and as a falling fig from the fig tree. For my sword shall be bathed in heaven. Behold, it shall come down upon Idumea and upon the people of my curse to judgment." And then again, in the Olivet Discourse in Matthew 24 and Mark 13 and Luke 21, Jesus speaks of this upcoming event that generation that he was speaking to would experience during their lifetime. He says in Matthew 24:29, "Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken." So the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. There is a changing of the guard, if you will, in heavens. A new heavens will be created after this judgment. And then we see this judgment in Revelation 6:13 at the second coming of Jesus Christ. It reads, "And the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman, and every free man, hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, Fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb." And it's interesting, as an aside, Jesus, before he was crucified, when he was walking to Golgotha, looked at the children of Jerusalem and the women there and said this, "But Jesus, turning unto them, said, Daughters of Jerusalem, weep not for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For behold, the days are coming, in the which they shall say, Blessed are the barren, and the wombs that never bare, and the paps which never gave suck. Then shall they begin to say to the mountains, Fall on us, and to the hills, cover us." And this is in Luke 23, verses 28 through 30. So this is a timestamp of the events seen in the book of Revelation. In Revelation 6, Jesus was telling that generation and the daughters of Jerusalem that they would see this very thing. And they did. Stars falling from heaven. So if we look at the earth and how it's described in this universe, this ball spinning 1,000 miles an hour within this galaxy of millions and millions of stars, which are these large clouds of gas that would just dwarf the earth, then these verses in the Bible would either not be true, or you would have to say that they're metaphorical and they're figurative and not literal. But when we look at stars, we see this, and this is Sirius, Venus, Polaris, Rigel, and this is shot with a Nikon P1000 camera, and you can see the shape of the stars. And I made a video on this, or couple, maybe several years ago, about Ezekiel's wheel within a wheel, this vision that he saw the living creatures in a wheel within a wheel. And my explanation of what are those wheels within a wheel that Ezekiel saw, that he saw an actual up close personal encounter with a star. And I think this is what we see today. We see a wheel within a wheel. These are living creatures that are within this, and I think it's probably some type of transport system within the firmament. But this are the living creatures that fell at that time. Again, there was a war in heaven. There was a transitioning, a changing of the guard, if you will, in order to establish not only a new earth, but a new heavens. And we can see in the firmament today, we see the Milky Way, and I believe it possibly is a result of this firmament being rolled like a scroll and the results of that. And you can see it here again. Possibly before Jesus' second coming and these events occurred, the heavens did not look like this. There was no, quote, Milky Way within the heavens. But as I mentioned, there was a war in heaven. In Revelation 12:7, we read, "And there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels." And this was a literal fight, this war in heaven. It was in a real place with real entities battling. In Revelation 12:8, "And prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, Now is come salvation and strength in the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ, for the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night." So again, the heavens after this event were much different than they were before that event. And again, the stars fell from heaven, living creatures were cast out, these angels that fought and warred with Michael and his angels. The heavens were rolled up like a scroll. There was a physical change within the firmament at that time. It was a new heavens with new people allowed in, because after Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection, when he sit at the right hand of on the throne of God afterwards, and speaking of the throne of God, when he got up there, there possibly could be light from the throne of God that we can see from the heavens now that we might not have been able to see prior to that. For instance, the aurora borealis that you see here. This possibly could be a change within the heavens that we're able to see after Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection. And then after this changing of the guard, and Satan and his angels were kicked out, and then the first resurrection occurred. And we see this in Revelation 26. Blessed and holy is he that hath part in the first resurrection. On such the second death hath no power, but they shall be priests of God and of Christ, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. So this new heavens and new earth, there was a changing of the guard. The first resurrection occurred at that time, and those that had the glorified bodies, believers in Christ that were resurrected at that time, prior to the 1,000-year millennial reign beginning, they were priests of God, and they reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. This is the millennial kingdom, is part of the initial 1,000 years of this new heavens and new earth. It was for a specific purpose, to further the gospel of Jesus Christ throughout the changed world at that time, through a population that had dwindled because of the catastrophic events and might not have even known what had happened, that they were given the good news of Christ. Also, with this time of desolation and destruction, the world, the new earth, needed to be rebuilt. An infrastructure needed to be established. And this was another goal of the glorified saints of Christ and those believers of Christ during this time. But there were first resurrected saints, glorified saints at that time, who are now giving access not only to the earth, but also to the heavens. This was a changing of the guard. Again, a new heavens and new earth were created. This is what Isaiah and 2 Peter were discussing, we're talking about. In John 1:51, Jesus says to Nathanael, and he saith unto him, Verily, verily, I say unto you, hereafter ye shall see heaven open, and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. And again, I believe during the first resurrection that these glorified saints were giving access to the heavens. And Jesus, speaking to his disciples before his death, burial, resurrection in John 14:1-3 says, Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. So there are many mansions in heaven. Jesus went to prepare this for the resurrected saints. The mansions of heaven. And these are real mansions. These are a spiritual realm, but it's real. You can see it. You can touch it. And it's in the heavens today. And we see descriptions of what heaven looks like. Getting back to the new heaven and new earth that is in our future. Afterwards, we see New Jerusalem descend. And it talks of New Jerusalem having streets of gold. It talks about the foundations of New Jerusalem and the 12 precious stones that it has. But these are biblical descriptions of what the buildings where people live, glorified saints and angels live in the heavens. And this is a real place. It will one day come down to a new earth. But I think what we see being built during the millennial reign of Christ was a shadow of the heavenly. And I think the glorified saints who had access to the heavens after the first resurrection saw the buildings in heaven, saw the mansions that Jesus made for the resurrected saints, and then came back to earth and built what they saw. And these are representations, I think, of heavenly buildings that we will one day see as believers. But this was an infrastructure that was being built by glorified saints, by mortal believers, possibly angelic architecture. And we see these mansions, these palaces like the Palace of Versailles. Again, I think these are shadows of the heavenly. And I think the murals and mosaics that you see with glorified saints and angels are reflective of that exact time period and what was going on during the millennial reign of Christ that has already occurred. So what are the new heavens and the new earth? Again, it is the time after the seventh final judgment. The new earth is that transformation of the supercontinent that we had prior to this destructive cataclysmic earthquake, this megaquake, the biggest one we've ever seen, have experienced and will ever experience, that it occurred at that time. The continents drifted apart, and this is the new earth. And just like we see, the new heavens was this changing of the guard, but also there's physical characteristics within the new heavens. There were new mansions being built. There were angels, Satan were cast out. And we can see possibly some battle scars and some differences within the firmament today that might not have been present prior to this occurring in the book of Revelation. But again, it occurred after this megaquake that we read about in Revelation 16, and we've talked about that at length in previous videos discussing this topic. But the new earth, within the new heavens and new earth that Isaiah and Peter are talking about, was this earth prior to these destructive cataclysmic events in the book of Revelation to what we see now currently. Our scientists, again, will say this happened over 225 million years through plate tectonics and continental drift, but I propose that it occurred a little over 1,000 years after the second coming of Jesus Christ, at the time of the trumpet and ball judgments. And the continents that we see today, this is the new earth that Peter and Isaiah are discussing. And again, the new heavens we just went over. And this new heavens and new earth so far have lasted over 1,000 years. The beginning of it was at the time the millennial reign of Christ was initiated. And after that 1,000 years, it was a literal 1,000 years, mentioned 6 times in Revelation 20. It had an expiration date. And afterwards, Satan was loosed for a little season, this time of deception that we're in now. So this new heavens and new earth that were created at that time, we are still a part of right now. We're waiting the new heaven and new earth that is yet to come in Revelation 21. And again, this new heavens, this new earth, part of it within the millennial kingdom, and we see this angelic architecture all over the world. And now we see spiritual deception unlike no other time ever experienced during this little season that we're in. So that encompasses the new heavens and new earth, the millennial kingdom of Christ, and this last days deception, this little season that we're in today. And it will come to its conclusion at the time when Satan leads his army of the earth against surrounds the camp of the saints and the beloved city, and fire is sent down by God from heaven to devour them. And that will end the little season and begin the events that we see in the latter part of Revelation 20 through the conclusion of the book. So again, lots to look forward to as believers. I hope this helps in looking at the new heavens and new earth and seeing it as being a distinct, separate time, separate event from the new heaven and new earth of Revelation 21. God bless.